The live stream counter had just crossed $63,000 when the room fell into an uneasy quiet. One of the senior black belts was down, holding his shoulder, his face pale under the lights. The coach stood over him, muttering into his mic, scanning the line of fighters still waiting their turn, none of whom stepped forward. A voice from the back wall, trying to be funny, floated across the gym. "Let the janitor do it." A few chuckled, but no one really laughed. Then, unexpectedly, the coach turned to her clipboard still in hand and said without blinking, "Step in." No one thought he was serious, not at first. She didn't answer, didn't look confused or excited. She just placed the sweaty GI she'd been folding on top of the laundry bin, walked calmly to the hook on the wall, and pulled down a faded jacket. She moved like she'd done it 100 times. No rush, no pause. The room stayed still as she slipped on the top and tightened the belt across her waist. A few purple belts looked at each other, waiting for someone to stop it. The camera at the back twitched and adjusted its angle, unsure if it should follow. It did. Barefoot, she stepped onto the mat. The floor seemed to shift beneath her. Every conversation stopped mid-sentence. The champion was already waiting at the center, arms crossed, half smiling like he couldn't believe this was real. She met him at the center. No nod, no words. Just a bow, slow and full, like it meant something. The camera light blinked red. The comments began to roll. Who is she? Is this a stunt? What is happening? The coach stepped back. The room held its breath, and she stood there, still unnamed, still unseen, ready. Part 1. Introducing the main character, the invisible one. Hannah Reyes moved like someone who knew how to stay out of the way. She wore the same gray hoodie almost every day. Sleeves always pushed up, the fabric thinned at the elbows. Her shoes were old and soft at the edges, soles worn nearly flat. She kept her fingers wrapped in white athletic tape, even though no one asked why. The tape was clean tight, replaced each morning before the gym opened. She wrapped them slow like a ritual while the floor was still quiet. She arrived early. Always did. By the time the first students trickled in, the mats were already clean and the buckets rinsed. Most people didn't speak to her. Some nodded. A few dropped towels at her feet and walked off without waiting for a reply. Hannah never made a scene. She folded uniforms in neat rows beside the laundry bins. When someone tossed a GI without warning, she caught it, steadied it, and folded it just like the rest. She'd trained on those same mats years ago, before the surgery, before the funeral, before she slipped quietly into the background of her own story. Back then, she was fast, calculated. Not the strongest, not the loudest, but always centered. She'd once made it to nationals, won a silver medal in Denver. Her name had echoed in this same room, once shouted over the mats by coaches who now passed her without eye contact. The injury came during a scramble, a twist of her knee, nothing flashy. She'd taped it and kept going, but it never healed right. Months turned to years. Rehab turned into routine. Then her mother passed. No siblings. No one left. The gym offered her part-time cleaning work. It kept her close to something she couldn't quite walk away from. Now she watched others chase what she'd lost. Brown belts high-fived after sparring. White belts posted stories of training on social media, tagging the location. None of them tagged her. She never wore makeup. Her black hair was always tied into a low knot, practical clean. Her voice was soft, barely louder than a whisper when she needed to speak. There was a chair in the back corner she sometimes sat in between rounds. She didn't check her phone, just folded another GI, adjusted the loop of a belt, stood and wiped sweat from the mats. Even the head coach called her Hannah only in passing. Most students didn't know her name. Some thought she was a volunteer. Others assumed she was hired help. What they didn't know was that she still trained, not with partners, but alone, after hours, before opening. Her feet moved in shadow patterns across the mat, grip drills with a heavy rope solo, hip escapes, grip switches along the wall. No one saw her tape her wrists. No one noticed how often she paused by the belt display in the hallway, reading the names. Her own was gone, replaced by younger athletes who hadn't been there when she mattered. She kept her old belt, though. Pale brown, almost beige now, but still strong, tied neatly around her waist even when no one was watching. She didn't talk about her past. Not because she was ashamed, but because no one asked. She listened more than she spoke and moved with quiet respect through a space that no longer looked her way. There were days she thought of leaving. Then there were days when the silence felt like peace. She chose the floor over the podium, the edge of the room over the center mat. But sometimes in the middle of folding a uniform, she'd pause. Her hands would still for a moment, eyes fixed on the yellow stitching of a GI top, and for that one breath something flickered in her chest. Not regret, just memory. Then she folded the sleeves, looped the belt, and placed it in the stack. Steady, always steady, as if waiting didn't mean she'd stopped moving. Part 2. Setting the stage. The gym, a world divided. Valor Jiu-Jitsu Academy sat on the corner of a busy street in Queens, its windows always fogged slightly from the heat inside. The floors were polished every morning, but they never stayed clean for long. Sweat dried fast on the yellow mats and left behind outlines of effort. Inside, the lighting was bright and calculated. Overhead rigs cast even shadows for the cameras mounted in every corner. A long table of screens showed multiple angles, always recording. This was the week of black belt testing, and the room had an edge to it. Coaches from out of town leaned against the wall with arms crossed. Students wore fresh GIs with sponsor patches, adjusting cuffs, pulling belts tighter than needed. Names were called one at a time. Each athlete stepped forward, bowed, and faced their test partner like it was a stage performance. The stream scrolled their ranks and titles across the bottom. Their followers sent emojis and fire reactions from somewhere far away. Hannah swept in slow lines between their feet. She carried a small bucket, a folded towel, and a spray bottle clipped to her belt loop. No one stopped sparring when she passed. She knew the rhythm of the room. The sharp slap of a mat, the grunts under pressure, the buzz of someone watching from their phone in the lobby. It all blended into a steady hum she didn't interrupt. When a match ended, she stepped onto the mat and wiped down the space in silence. Sometimes the fighters didn't even clear the area before she started. They stepped around her without looking. The camera rarely caught her. She moved just outside the shot behind tripods and power cords. Once her hand was visible adjusting a belt someone had dropped. The viewer count didn't notice. Coaches gave feedback loud enough for the mic to hear. Fighters nodded, some smiling wide, others pacing the edge to stay warm. The room was full of drive and repetition. Hannah folded each uniform as it came, sweat still clinging to the fabric. Some were tossed at her feet. Some landed on her back. She never said anything. She placed each finished GI into a clean stack beside the bins. Her motion was always exact. Sleeves aligned, collar flat, belt looped twice, then folded over. No one asked if she needed help. No one offered her water. Someone dropped a protein bar wrapper near her and kept walking. From the back, music played low but steady, a beat that made the environment feel charged but controlled. Every now and then someone shouted a cue or cheered a pass. Applause broke out in short bursts. Hannah didn't react. She swept behind the benches and cleaned the corners others didn't see. Her shoes squeaked softly on the mat, but no one turned. There was a mirror on the far wall. Most of the students glanced at it between rounds, fixing their collars or checking posture. Hannah passed it without pause. Her reflection followed behind her like a ghost. The divide was clear. On one side, ambition cameras and curated performance. On the other, her. Quiet, unfiltered, out of focus. She paused once near the stream console where the screen showed 3 angles. None pointed her way. The director adjusted one lens and muttered about exposure. Hannah stepped back before she was noticed. When the Academy star walked in, the mood changed. Marcus Cruz, 5-time IBJJF world champion. His GI was custom-stitched with gold thread. Phones came out. Even black belts straightened their backs when they greeted him. The sound level dipped just slightly, enough to know status had arrived. Hannah kept folding. Her fingers didn't slow. The fabric gave way under her touch like it remembered her too, but no one else did. Marcus shook hands with the coach and gave a short nod toward the camera crew. He moved across the room like he'd done it 100 times. The mat welcomed him. The room did too. The scoreboard blinked with his name. The chat bar started filling with comments. People watching from out of state wanted to see him roll live. Hannah crouched to grab another GI. A pair of white belts walked past her, still talking about guard passing and tournament placements. One of them nearly stepped on her hand. She didn't pull away fast, just finished what she was doing and stood again. Her knees cracked quietly, but no one heard. This was the split. The mat full of noise and hunger, and the edges where she stayed, still breathing the same air but part of a different world. Part 3. Rising Conflict. Sub. Part 3.1 Mocked and Invisible. Someone called her the gym's good luck charm once. The tone was playful, but the smile that followed was tight. Another voice chimed in and called her the mascot, and that name stuck longer than anyone expected. No one said it to her face after the first week, but they said it loud enough for her to hear, loud enough for the new students to pick it up quickly. She became part of the room like the mop or the timer on the wall. Uniforms were dropped near her feet without a glance, some still damp, some heavy with sweat, none handed with care. A few of the younger guys tossed their belts like it was a game. One landed on her shoulder. She didn't flinch, just untangled it, folded it, and kept going. They laughed behind her back. Not cruelly, just casually, like she wasn't really there. Like her silence made it okay. One of the brown belts told someone she used to train back in the day, said it like a joke, like it didn't matter now. She was never invited to drills. No one asked her to roll. Some weren't even sure if she still had a rank. When the room got loud, her name never came up. When the room got quiet, it was easier not to look her way. She never asked for attention, which made it easier to ignore her. She stayed close to the bins, kept her hands busy, folded sleeves with the same care each time. Her fingers worked through cotton soaked with effort that didn't belong to her. She lined up the belts and stacked the uniforms like she was still part of something, even if it no longer looked back. No one ever said thank you. No one checked if she needed a break. Some assumed she was paid by the hour. Others weren't even sure if she was paid at all. Coach walked by once and said mascot morale keeps the place clean. It was half a joke. No one questioned it. Someone laughed. Someone clapped her shoulder like you would a dog who fetched well. She nodded once and kept moving. She cleaned a section of mat still warm from sparring. Her knees touched the edge of the mat. A stripe of tape came loose from her wrist. She pressed it back down without stopping. She heard the comments. She caught the glances, but her eyes stayed on the task in front of her. Every fold was crisp. Every GI was lined with care, and the silence around her never cracked. Part 3.2 Something Shifts. Logan Price walked past with his GI top untied, sweat dripping from his chest. He stopped just long enough to drop the damp jacket at Hannah's feet. Loud enough for half the room to hear, he said she used to train until it got serious. A few students laughed under their breath. One of the purple belts shook his head but said nothing. Logan high-fived someone on his way to the wall and didn't look back. Hannah didn't look up. She folded the GI with slow, practiced hands, brushing out the wrinkles like she always did. Her fingers moved over the seams, checking for loose threads. The fabric landed with a soft thud in the stack. She reached for the next one. This one still held a faint trace of cologne and tape glue. No one apologized. No one told Logan to stop. The room just kept moving like usual. But something in her posture shifted. She didn't change her pace. She didn't tense or flinch. She just stood a little taller. Her back stayed straight as she wiped down a section of mat. Her eyes scanned the surface, not the people. Her breath came even. The camera by the livestream wall twitched. A tech adjusted the angle, barely perceptible. The lens tilted a degree closer to the corner where she worked. A few students noticed. One glanced at the camera, then at her, then back to the floor. Nothing was said. The atmosphere felt different. Not loud, not hostile, just off by a single degree. Marcus Cruz leaned against the far wall, sipping water. His eyes slid toward the movement near the bins, but only for a second. He said nothing either. A wrapper crinkled. A belt slapped the floor. Someone pulled a jacket over their shoulders and tied the knot twice. Hannah folded another uniform. She tucked the ends in smooth. Her tape was fraying at the edges and her shoes left faint prints on the mat. No one spoke her name, but a few eyes stayed longer than usual. Not curious, not mocking, just watching. The livestream count ticked upward again. A small red light blinked above the camera. The chat bar rolled quietly. Hannah placed the folded G on top of the stack. She paused for just a second, her hand resting on the fabric. Then she stepped back, her shoulders still. Something was building, not loud, not planned, just waiting. Part 4. Turning Point. The Fight. Part 4.1. The Opening. Stepping onto the mat. The sound was sharp and sudden. A slap, a grunt, and then silence as one of the black belts hit the mat wrong. His face twisted, hand clutching his shoulder, breathing fast. Coach knelt beside him, checked the arm, then stood with a clipped breath. His eyes scanned the line of waiting fighters, but no one stepped forward. Most looked down or adjusted their knee sleeves. One rubbed his wrist and backed up half a step. Even Marcus Cruz, standing near the edge, stayed still. Coach raised his voice, asked for an alternate. The room stayed quiet. One tech near the camera whispered about cutting the feed. Someone in the corner muttered something that carried farther than it should have. Let the janitor do it. A few laughed. One or two didn't. Coach looked toward the back wall where Hannah stood. She had just finished folding another GI, her fingers still pressing down the crease. He said it like it meant nothing. Step in. No one believed him at first, not even the ones who had laughed. Hannah didn't ask if he was serious. She placed the G gently on the top of the pile. Then she wiped her hands on her pants, turned, and walked to the wall hook where her old jacket hung. She slipped it on in one motion. The fabric clung slightly, not quite dry from the last time. Her belt was already looped through the sleeve. She tied it slowly tight and centered. Someone near the bench whispered to a teammate, "Is this for real? Should we stop the stream?" The red light on the camera stayed solid. Hannah stepped barefoot onto the edge of the mat. Her feet made almost no sound, but every head in the room turned, even the ones pretending not to watch. The GI sat clean on her shoulders. Her belt looked pale and worn, but tied sharp. Her taped fingers brushed the ends once before she let them fall. Marcus shifted his weight and gave a half smile. He didn't look concerned. Not yet. Hannah didn't return the look. She walked calmly to the center, each step measured. The mat was warm beneath her soles, already holding the sweat of 10 rounds before her. She stopped across from Marcus. He cocked his head and asked just loud enough if she was sure. She didn't nod. She didn't answer. She bowed. The motion was slow, exact. When she rose, the room didn't breathe. Even the livestream operator didn't move. A new tag appeared on screen. Unexpected guest. Coach crossed his arms near the back. He didn't call it off. No one else did either. A white belt near the wall started to say something, then closed his mouth. The gym was frozen, like it couldn't decide if this was a stunt or a mistake. Marcus adjusted his stance. Not disrespectfully. Just ready. Like warming up for a seminar role, not a real test. Hannah let her hands rest by her sides. The silence stretched. Then the camera zoomed in frame wide enough to catch them both. She blinked once, slow and calm. The room didn't cheer. It didn't scoff. It just watched. Whatever came next, no one could take it back. The first step had already landed. The rest would follow. Subpart 4.2. The choke. Silence across the screen. Marcus moved first. A light collar grip, relaxed and casual, the kind of entry you use to test timing, not threaten. Hannah didn't flinch. She let him take the collar and matched his step with balance, not resistance. He circled left, pulling gently. She followed without tension. Her hands mirrored his, not forcing the exchange, just keeping time. He tried a lapel drag. It looked sharp, but lacked commitment. She turned with it, never off base. Her foot repositioned quietly, heel brushing the mat. Marcus shifted to a knee tap. She dipped her shoulder and slid around the motion, not breaking pace. Her hips angled behind his, her arm threading in without warning. There was no explosive movement, no sudden break, just a quiet shift in control, like gravity leaning in her favor. She took his back in transition. It didn't look like a mistake. It looked like she meant to be there all along. He adjusted, posted a hand rolled to shake her. She stayed with him. No grip breaks, no wasted effort. Just pressure in the right places, timing like breath. Her right leg hooked. Then the left. Her feet anchored. His weight settled beneath hers. For the first time, Marcus stopped smiling. He dropped his chin. She didn't fight it. Her left arm underhooked, gently holding space without force. The choke began slowly. Her right hand moved along his lapel, fingers taped, searching for the seam. She found it. The lapel slid into her grip like it belonged there. She didn't rush, just pulled clean and tight, setting the fold across the back of his neck. Marcus shifted again. A burst of motion trying to rotate. She floated with it. Her posture didn't break. Her knees hugged his waist. His hand reached for her wrist. She adjusted by inches. Her knuckles pressed against his spine. Her grip didn't tremble. The red light on the camera stayed solid. The chat froze for 2 seconds, then filled with question marks. No one in the room moved. His hand lifted once, then again. Finally, with a short, sharp motion, he tapped. One hand, quick and final. Hannah held for a moment, still composed, then released. Her hand slipped away like it had never been there. Marcus sat up slowly, shoulders hunched, breathing heavy. His GI collar hung loose. His belt sagged uneven at his hip. He looked down, not confused, just stunned. Hannah stood without speaking. The mat didn't react. The room didn't cheer. The silence was full. The camera caught everything. Wide frame, perfect angle, no cuts, no reset. She stepped back to her corner. Her fingers loosened from the grip. Her chest rose once, then settled. Marcus stayed seated. He didn't look at her. He stared at the floor. Coach didn't say a word. He just watched. Everyone else did too. The live stream chat exploded. What just happened? Was that real? Who is she? Hannah didn't answer. She bowed and walked to the edge of the mat. Not rushed, not proud, just finished. The red light blinked again. The view count crossed 90,000, then 100,000. Someone near the tech booth clipped the fight and uploaded it. One hand, no reset. The title hit every timeline within minutes. Inside the gym, no one touched the mat, no one stretched, no one filled the silence. She folded her jacket as she walked. Her belt stayed tied. Her taped fingers brushed the loop once more. Marcus remained in place, his posture smaller than before. Not broken, just quiet. The gym felt heavier. The mats didn't look different. But something had changed, something everyone felt but couldn't name. Part 5, Aftermath and Recognition. The lights were already on when Hannah arrived. The mats had been swept. The air smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and tape glue. No one else had shown up yet. The gym was quiet. She walked with her usual rhythm, slow but steady. She stopped by the testing board. Its surface was lined with names in black marker. At the very bottom, a new name had been added. Hannah Reyes, written in the same handwriting as the rest. No notes, no asterisk, just a number beside it. Black belt 312. Her eyes stayed on it for a long second. Then she nodded, small and certain. She turned and sat by the bench. Her hands reached for the tape without thinking. She began wrapping her fingers one by one. The tape stuck smooth. Her fingers moved calmly, same pattern, same pull. Nothing rushed, nothing stiff. Coach entered through the side door, clipboard in hand. He saw her and paused. They looked at each other not long. He gave a short nod and said good morning. She didn't answer, but she didn't look away. He stepped aside. She walked past him without a word. A few minutes later, students started arriving. One by one, they stepped in quieter than usual. The usual talk was softer. Some didn't speak at all. They stretched in corners, tied belts more carefully. No one stepped in her path. No one asked her to clean. One white belt dropped his GI next to her feet, then froze. She didn't move to pick it up. He stepped forward, picked it up himself, and walked off without a word. In the back hallway, something new hung on the wall. A photograph freshly mounted. A close-up frame of Hannah locking in the choke. Her taped hand was visible, set clean across the collar. Marcus's head was bowed, his body frozen in mid-tap. Underneath, a small plaque. Black belt 312. Passed without testing. No logos, no spotlight. Someone stopped to look at it. Then another. No one asked how it got there. No one asked who approved it. The photo stayed silent, but it said enough. Her name no longer needed explaining. Near the live stream booth, a small screen still played muted highlights. Her match replayed on loop every few minutes. The tap was clean. The counter in the corner had already crossed 1.2 million. Hannah didn't watch it. She sat quietly near the edge of the mat, lacing her fingers through a loop of belt. Her back was straight. Her breath stayed calm. No one clapped. No announcements were made. But the tone in the room had changed. A brown belt tied his GI and glanced at her. He didn't say anything. He just nodded once and joined the warm-up line. The energy in the gym was different. Not tense, just focused. Eyes moved differently now. People folded their own uniforms. They picked up after themselves. Some even wiped their corner of the mat after drills. Hannah didn't tell them to. She didn't ask for anything. She just stood where she always had. She bowed before stepping on the mat. Some bowed back. Others didn't, but no one looked away. Coach stood with his arms crossed by the wall. He didn't give her instructions. He just watched. Whatever needed to be said had already happened, not in words, but in action, in silence, in change. A white belt finished his round and stepped off the mat, sweat dripping from his forehead. Without thinking, he tossed his GI top in Hannah's direction. The fabric flew through the air, loose and heavy. She caught it before it hit the ground. Her hand closed around the collar with quiet ease. Then she looked at him. She didn't frown. She didn't scold. She just walked over and held it out to him. Her voice was steady, not sharp. "You fold your own." That was all she said. The boy hesitated, cheeks flushed. He took the gi with both hands, then nodded once and stepped back. No one laughed. No one tried to explain it away. The room had already learned. Behind her, the photo stayed mounted on the wall. The plaque below it hadn't moved. Her fingers in that image looked the same as the ones holding the GI now. She turned back to the bench and sat down. Her breathing was calm. Her shoulders didn't carry anything extra. The red light on the camera wasn't blinking anymore, but everyone was still watching her. They had been since yesterday. No music played, no announcement followed, just a long quiet that no one wanted to interrupt. She didn't move again for a while. She just sat there beneath her own photo. Not proud, not cold, just present. The final round began, but something stayed behind in the stillness, something no one wanted to forget.